When preparing to migrate your tests, this is for people that have existing tests in Canvas or Learning Zone and want to migrate them to a new quizzes test. The first step is to identify what type of quiz it is. Now, the simplest type of quiz is, let me come back here and show you, you can't tell from the outside what it looks like on the inside. So this is just a regular quiz, but when you go inside, you identify what type of quiz it is by going to Edit and then going to the Questions tab. In the Questions tab, you will see that an average quiz or a normal, easy to migrate quiz will have the questions within the test. Now you can, if there's less than 25 questions, you can do the show details. If not, you may have to look at random questions to kind of see what type of questions they are. But if they are multiple choice or true false, most likely they will migrate fine. If they are another question type, they may not migrate the same. They may change the format. So please find out more if you have problems in that area. Now, the next question type is linked test banks. Linked test banks are when you have the test banks in the back end and you put a link to a group in the test. And you might do this if you have a large test bank and you want all the students to have different questions. So to see what that looks like, I'm going into Edit, into Questions, and you see here this is linked to a test bank. So this type of quiz is a little more complicated to migrate. I'll explain that here in just a minute, but I'm going to show you the third type of test, and that is where you have question groups. Or I'm going to go in to edit this test, and you notice these are groups and the questions are within the groups. So those are the three types of tests. The first one is just a regular test with the questions in it. The second one is linked, and the third one has question groups. Now the first one, the easy one, to migrate, all you have to do, I'm going to come save this so I can get back to the regular test. When you're in quizzes, now you can't do this from the modules, you have to be in quizzes in the left navigation, and this is the Chapter 2 quiz, so it's this one right here. In order to migrate it, all you have to do is go into quizzes and select migrate, and that will convert this quiz to a new quiz, and you'll see it migrating down below. Now I would suggest that once you finish migrating that quiz, that you identify it with NQ at the end until you get your organization in your gradebook. Now the second type of quiz, the linked test bank, is a little different, and actually the linked test bank and the question groups are very similar in how you migrate them. In these, you have to create a new test bank in new quizzes, and in order to do that, you have to import all of the questions from the test bank into the test. So the first step would be to delete this, and then the next step would be to add all of the questions from that question bank. So I'm going to delete this, and then I'm going to find the questions, and I find the Chapter 3 questions that I wanted, and I make sure and select all. Don't want to leave any in the old question bank. If there's more than 50 questions, you have to hit more choices. There we go. We have them all. There's no more choices. I'm going to add the questions. Now, once those questions have been added into this test, so I've removed the link and added the questions, then I need to export this test. And the reason I'm doing that is because I need a QTI file, and the only way to get that is to export a test. Now, the third question type, this is the groups, is very similar in that you can't migrate the group. You have to take the questions out of the group. And the easiest way to do that is to delete the group and then add the questions in the test. So you're going to do the exact same thing. You're going to delete the group and then add the questions. If you have more than one question group, you're going to need to decide if you want more than one question group in the new quizzes, or if you want to combine the questions in these groups into one question group. If you combine them, then you can just add all the questions to this test rather than in the groups, and then export this test. If you want separate question groups, you have to create a separate test for each group. In order to have a test bank in the new quizzes, you have to have a QTI file for each test bank. So each test bank or each QTI file is created with the export of a test. So that's something you have to decide, but in this case I'm going to say we're going to put the questions from both of these groups in one test to make things just a little bit easier. And then I come down here and go find questions, and my questions are in the back of this test. I'm going to select all and more questions and select all again to make sure and get all of the questions, and then I'm going to add all of those questions, and then also I'm going to add the other test bank that's currently in here. So I'm going to come down here and go to more questions or find questions, and I'm going to go to the other test bank, select all, and luckily that's all there is. So once all of the questions from the two banks are in here, I'm going to save this test and export it as a question bank file or a QTI. I'll explain how to do the export process and import process in the next video. Thank you.